My name is Claire Anderson, and I'm about to tell you the story of how a one-way plane ticket became the greatest gift my mother ever gave me, though not in the way she intended. Before I explain what happened, let me take you back to the moment that changed everything. The moment my entire family gathered around our dining table to celebrate what they thought was just another birthday for their disappointing daughter. I was 32 years old, still living in my childhood home in suburban Michigan. To everyone around that table, I was the family failure. The daughter who never quite figured life out, the one who worked random odd jobs, spent too much time on her laptop, and contributed barely enough for rent and groceries. My younger sister, Rebecca, 28, was the golden child. Married to a successful accountant named Derek, always dressed impeccably, always saying the right things. My brother Jason, 35, ran a small consulting business and never missed an opportunity to remind me how much more successful he was than me. And then there was my mother, Patricia Anderson, 58 years old, sharp-tongued, and convinced that love meant pushing people toward what she considered success. My father, Richard, 61, had long ago stopped having opinions that contradicted my mother's. He was a shadow in his own home, nodding along to whatever she declared. That evening, as I sat at the dinner table with a small cake in front of me, I noticed something different. My mother had that look on her face, the one that meant she'd made a decision and was about to announce it like a royal decree. Rebecca kept glancing at Mom with a knowing smile. Jason smirked into his wine glass. My father studied his plate like it contained the secrets of the universe. After we sang a half-hearted happy birthday, my mother stood up and cleared her throat. She pulled an envelope from her purse and placed it in front of me with the ceremonial importance of someone presenting a championship trophy. "Claire," she began, her voice carrying that tone of disappointed authority I'd heard my entire life. "Your father and I have been talking. You're 32 now. You've been living here for far too long, and honestly, sweetie, it's time you learned to stand on your own 2 feet. I looked at the envelope but didn't open it. I could feel every eye in the room on me. Rebecca's smile widened. Jason leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, watching like this was dinner theater. My mother continued, "We've decided to give you a birthday present that will actually help you. A fresh start, a new beginning." I opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a one-way plane ticket to Seattle, Washington. Departure date, 1 week from today. No return ticket, just one direction, away from here, away from them. My mother sat back down and folded her hands on the table like she'd just solved a complex problem. "Seattle has opportunities, Claire. Tech jobs. Coffee shops always hiring. You can make something of yourself there. Besides, Rebecca and Derek have some wonderful news." Rebecca practically glowed as she placed her hand on the table, showing off her barely visible baby bump. "We're pregnant," she announced, and the table erupted in congratulations. Everyone hugged Rebecca. Everyone cooed over Derek. And then my mother turned back to me, her expression somewhere between pity and impatience. "Rebecca and Derek are going to need your room for the nursery. The baby will be here in 6 months, and we need time to convert the space. So really, this works out perfectly for everyone." The words hit me like ice water, but I kept my expression neutral. "You're kicking me out so Rebecca can have my bedroom?" My mother's eyes flashed with irritation. "Don't be dramatic, Claire. We're not kicking you out. We're giving you an opportunity, a chance to finally do something meaningful with your life instead of wasting away in the basement working on whatever it is you do on that computer all day." Jason laughed out loud. "Come on, Claire. You've been mooching off Mom and Dad for years. The least you can do is give up your room gracefully. It's not like you've contributed anything significant to this family." The injustice of that statement burned in my chest, but I swallowed it down. Because what they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that 6 months ago, I'd sold my software company, DataStream AI, for $8.7 million. For 5 years, I'd been working in that basement they mocked, building algorithms, developing artificial intelligence software for data analysis, creating something from nothing while they dismissed me as a failure. I'd lived like I was broke intentionally, paying small amounts for rent, driving my old car, wearing simple clothes, eating dinner with the family I knew looked down on me. Why? Because I wanted to see who they really were. I wanted to know how they'd treat me when they thought I had nothing to offer them. And now I knew. I looked at the plane ticket again and felt something shift inside me. Not sadness, not even anger, something colder, something calculating. I looked up at my mother and smiled. "Thank you," I said quietly. "This is very generous." My mother looked relieved like she'd expected a fight. "I'm glad you understand, sweetie. This is really for the best." Rebecca reached across the table and squeezed my hand with fake sympathy. "You're going to love Seattle, Claire. Fresh start, new people, who knows? Maybe you'll finally meet someone and settle down like a normal person." I pulled my hand back gently. Maybe, I said. Then I stood up, took my piece of birthday cake, and walked down to the basement where I'd spent the last 5 years building an empire they couldn't even imagine. Sitting in front of my computer setup, multiple monitors glowing in the darkness, I made a decision. I would accept their gift. I would take that one-way ticket. But before I left, I was going to make sure they understood exactly who they'd just thrown away. And when the truth came out, they would realize that the daughter they'd treated like a burden was the only thing holding their carefully constructed lives together. Because while I'd been working in this basement, I hadn't just been building software. I'd been watching, listening, and I'd discovered secrets about each of them that would shatter the perfect family image my mother clung to so desperately. My father's hidden gambling debts, Jason's failing business he'd been lying about for 2 years, Rebecca's husband Derek and his inappropriate relationship with his assistant, my mother's shoplifting habit she thought no one knew about. I'd kept these secrets to myself, thinking that family meant protecting each other, but they'd just shown me that to them, family meant using whoever was convenient and discarding them when they became inconvenient. So I opened my laptop and began to write a series of emails that would be sent automatically 1 week after my departure. Emails to creditors, to Derek's company HR department, to the country club where my mother volunteered, to Jason's business partners. Not out of cruelty, but because the truth has a way of surfacing eventually. And I'd rather they face it than continue living lies built on my silence. As I planned my departure from the family that had just discarded me like trash, I felt something unexpected. Freedom. They'd just given me permission to stop pretending, to stop making myself small so they could feel big, to stop playing the role of the failure so they could play the role of the successful ones. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Thank you for being mature about this. We knew you'd understand." I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "I understand perfectly. See you before I leave." But what I didn't say was that when I walked out that door in 1 week, I wouldn't just be leaving their house. I'd be leaving them to face the consequences of underestimating the daughter they never bothered to really know. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of my mother's voice echoing through the house, already on the phone with someone, probably bragging about how she'd successfully launched her disappointing daughter toward independence. I lay in bed for a moment, staring at the ceiling of the room I'd occupied for 32 years, and felt absolutely nothing. No nostalgia, no sadness, just a strange, calm clarity. I'd spent the night finalizing my plans, and now it was time to begin the most satisfying week of my life. Not because I was leaving, but because I was finally going to stop hiding who I really was. I got dressed in my usual simple jeans and t-shirt, the uniform of someone they believed barely scraped by, and headed upstairs. My mother was in the kitchen, already preparing breakfast with the efficiency of someone who ran her household like a military operation. "Good morning, sweetie," she said without looking at me, cracking eggs into a pan. "I've been thinking about your move. We should probably go through your things this weekend. I'm sure most of it is junk anyway, so we can just donate whatever you don't take on the plane." The casual dismissal of my entire life into the categories of take or junk would have hurt a week ago. Now it just confirmed what I already knew. To her, I was a problem being solved, not a daughter being loved. "Actually, Mom," I said, pouring myself coffee, "I've already arranged for movers to handle everything. They'll come the day after I leave. Professional service. Very efficient." She turned to look at me, surprise flickering across her face. "Movers? Claire, that's expensive. Why would you waste money on movers when your father and Jason could just help you pack a few boxes?" I smiled into my coffee cup. "Because I have more things than you realize. And because I can afford it." The statement hung in the air for just a moment before she laughed, that dismissive little laugh that had accompanied most of my life achievements. "Afford it? Honey, you barely make enough to cover your rent here. Don't put yourself in debt trying to look successful." I didn't respond. I just sipped my coffee and watched her return to cooking, already dismissing my comment as another example of my poor judgment. My father shuffled into the kitchen, newspaper under his arm, and nodded at me. "Morning, Claire." "Morning, Dad." He sat at the table and unfolded his newspaper, but I noticed his hands were shaking slightly. The gambling debts I'd discovered were substantial. Over $200,000 spread across various online betting accounts and casino markers. He'd been hiding it for 3 years, slowly draining his retirement fund, taking out secret loans, all while my mother remained obliviously convinced they were financially secure. "Dad," I said casually, "have you thought about what you're going to do when Mom finds out about the money?" His head snapped up, eyes wide, face draining of color. The newspaper crumpled in his suddenly tight grip. "What are you talking about?" I kept my voice gentle. "The gambling, Dad." The debts, the loans. I know about all of it. My mother spun around from the stove. What is she talking about, Richard? My father's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. I could see panic spreading across his features, but I held up my hand. I'm not telling her, Dad. That's between you two. I'm just saying that secrets have a way of coming out, and it might be better if she heard it from you rather than from a debt collector. The kitchen went silent except for the sizzling of eggs in the pan. My mother stared at my father with growing suspicion. My father stared at me with a mixture of fear and confusion. How did you... He started, but I cut him off. I notice things, Dad. I pay attention. Unlike everyone in this family, I actually see what's happening around me. My mother's voice went cold. Richard, what is she talking about? But I was already walking out of the kitchen, leaving them to their reckoning. I had no interest in watching that conversation unfold. It wasn't about hurting them. It was about stopping the pretense that we were a functional family that communicated honestly with each other. As I headed back downstairs, I heard my mother's voice rising, questions firing like bullets, my father's stammering responses, the beginning of a truth that had been buried for years. That afternoon, Jason showed up at the house, clearly summoned by my mother in the aftermath of the breakfast revelation. I was in the basement, organizing files on my computer, when I heard his footsteps on the stairs. What the hell did you say to Dad? He demanded, bursting into my workspace without knocking. I turned slowly to face him. The truth. Something this family seems allergic to. He stepped closer, his face red with anger. You have no idea what you're talking about. Dad's finances are none of your business. You're right, I agreed. Just like my life is none of yours. But you didn't seem to have any problem judging me last night, telling me I've contributed nothing to this family. So let's talk about contributions, Jason. His eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? I pulled up a file on my computer and turned the monitor so he could see it. Bank statements, business records, loan applications, all belonging to his consulting company, J.M. Anderson Consulting, all showing a business that was hemorrhaging money, kept barely alive by loans he'd taken out using my parents' house as collateral without their knowledge. Your business is dying, I said flatly. Has been for 2 years. You've been taking money from Mom and Dad, telling them it's for business expansion, but really it's just to keep the lights on. You've got maybe 3 months before it all collapses completely. Jason's face went from red to white. How did you get those files? That's private information. That's illegal. No, I interrupted. What's illegal is forging your father's signature on loan documents. What's illegal is using someone else's property as collateral without their consent. What's potentially illegal is the creative accounting you've been doing to hide losses from your business partners. He grabbed the edge of my desk, knuckles white. You can't prove any of that. I smiled. Actually, I can. I have copies of everything. Digital forensics is kind of my specialty, Jason. You'd be surprised what you can find when you actually know what you're doing with a computer. Why? He whispered. And for the first time, he looked less like my arrogant older brother and more like a scared man watching his world crumble. Why are you doing this? I stood up to face him directly. Because last night you laughed at me. You called me a mooch. You implied I was worthless. And Mom and Dad, they just sat there and let you. Rebecca smiled like I was garbage being taken out. None of you ever once asked me what I actually do down here. You just assumed I was failing because that fit the narrative you wanted. Jason opened his mouth to respond, but I held up my hand. I'm not telling Mom and Dad about your business. Just like I'm not telling them about Derek's affair with his assistant, or Rebecca's DUI that she paid someone to cover up, or Mom's little shoplifting hobby at Nordstrom. I'm not telling them because that's not my job. But I want you to know that I know. I want all of you to understand that the daughter you dismissed, the sister you mocked, she sees everything. He stood there frozen, processing what I'd just said. You're bluffing about Rebecca and Mom. Rebecca got a DUI 14 months ago after a girls' night out, I said calmly. She paid off the officer and the charges were never filed. The officer's name is Thomas Bradley, and he's currently under investigation for accepting bribes. When that comes out, Rebecca's payment is going to surface. As for Mom, she's stolen over $15,000 worth of merchandise from Nordstrom over the past 3 years. Small items, jewelry, scarves, cosmetics. She thinks the thrill is worth it. The security footage disagrees. Jason sank down onto the old couch in the corner of the basement. Jesus Christ, Claire, what are you? I'm someone who paid attention, I said. I'm someone who was invisible enough that nobody noticed me noticing. And I'm someone who is leaving in 6 days, taking all of these secrets with me, unless this family gives me a reason to care about protecting them. He looked up at me. and I saw something I'd never seen before in my brother's eyes: respect and fear. "What do you want?" "Nothing," I said honestly. "I don't want money. I don't want apologies. I don't even want acknowledgement. I just want you all to sit with the knowledge that you threw away someone who could have been your greatest ally." After Jason left, pale and shaken, I heard him having a hushed, urgent conversation with my mother upstairs. I heard my name mentioned several times, followed by my mother's sharp voice asking questions he clearly didn't want to answer. I didn't care. The seeds were planted. The foundation of their comfortable delusions was cracking. That evening, Rebecca showed up for dinner with Derek. They looked perfect, as always. Rebecca glowing with early pregnancy, Derek in his expensive suit, both of them radiating the success and stability my parents desperately wanted to believe in. We sat around the same table where they'd given me the plane ticket just 24 hours before. My mother seemed distracted, watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. My father was quiet, barely touching his food. Jason avoided eye contact with everyone. Rebecca, oblivious to the tension, chattered happily about baby names and nursery colors. "We're thinking soft yellow for the walls," she said, gesturing with her fork. "Gender neutral, modern. I've already been looking at furniture for Claire's room." She said Claire's room like it was already hers, like I'd already vacated not just the physical space, but my entire place in the family. "It's going to be beautiful," my mother said, but her voice lacked its usual enthusiasm. Derek turned to me with practiced politeness. "So, Claire, Seattle, that's a big move. Do you have a job lined up? Place to stay?" I met his eyes directly. "I have everything arranged, Derek. Thanks for asking." "What kind of work are you looking for?" he pressed, probably trying to make conversation but coming across as condescending. "Actually," I said, setting down my fork, "I won't be looking for work. I'm taking some time to figure out my next venture." Rebecca laughed, that same dismissive laugh my mother had perfected. "Next venture? Claire, you've never had a first venture, unless you count those little websites you make." The words "little websites" hung in the air. 5 years of work. Artificial intelligence algorithms that were now being used by Fortune 500 companies. Software that revolutionized data analysis for major corporations. Reduced to little websites by a sister who thought a marketing degree made her successful. "You're right, Rebecca," I said calmly. "I have been working on little websites. Nothing important." Derek, sensing the tension but misreading it completely, jumped in to play peacemaker. "I'm sure you'll find something in Seattle. It's a good market for entry-level positions." Entry-level. At 32. After building and selling a company for nearly $9 million. I looked at Derek, this man who was cheating on my sister with his 24-year-old assistant, Madison Cooper, and felt a strange sense of detachment. "Derek," I said, my voice friendly and curious, "how's Madison doing? She still working as your assistant?" I watched his face carefully. The slight freeze, the fractional widening of his eyes, the way his hand tightened around his fork. "She's fine," he said, his voice carefully controlled. "Why do you ask?" "No reason," I said with a smile. "Just making conversation. Rebecca mentioned once that Madison is really good at her job, stays late, goes the extra mile. That kind of dedication is rare." Rebecca beamed, completely missing the undertone. "Madison is amazing. I'm so glad Derek has someone reliable. He works such long hours." I watched Derek's jaw clench. He knew. He knew that I knew. And the panic in his eyes was absolutely worth the plane ticket my mother had given me. "Well," I said, standing up and collecting my plate, "I should get back to packing. Lots to organize before Saturday." As I walked toward the kitchen, I heard Rebecca say, "She's being weird, right? Something's off with her." My mother's response was quiet but clear. "I'm starting to think we don't know your sister at all." The next 3 days passed in a strange bubble of tension. My mother watched me like I was a puzzle she couldn't solve. My father avoided me entirely, probably terrified I'd reveal more about his gambling. Jason came by the house less frequently, and when he did, he looked at me like I was a stranger. Rebecca remained oblivious, still planning her nursery takeover with enthusiasm. I spent those days methodically preparing, not just packing clothes and personal items, but organizing the evidence I'd collected over the years. Digital files backed up in 3 different secure locations. Physical documents sealed in packages ready to be mailed. Automated emails scheduled to send at specific times. I wasn't doing this out of revenge, exactly. I was doing it because they needed to understand that actions have consequences, that treating people as disposable comes with a price. On Thursday evening, 2 days before my departure, my mother knocked on my basement door. This was unusual. She rarely came down here, dismissing my workspace as that dark dungeon where Claire wastes her time. "Come in," I called out, and she descended the stairs slowly, looking around at my setup with new eyes. Multiple monitors, high-end computer equipment, servers humming quietly in the corner, filing cabinets full of organized documents. "Claire," she began, her voice uncertain in a way I'd never heard before. "We need to talk." I gestured to the chair across from my desk. She sat, her posture perfect as always, but her hands were folded tightly in her lap. "Your brother told me something yesterday," she said carefully. "He said you know things. About the family. Private things." I didn't confirm or deny. I just waited. She continued, her voice gaining an edge of her usual authority. "I don't know what you think you know, or what you think you've discovered playing detective on your computer, but whatever it is, it needs to stay in this family. Do you understand me? Is that why you came down here?" I asked. "To threaten me into silence?" Her eyes flashed with anger, but also something else. Fear. "I'm not threatening you. I'm reminding you that family loyalty means protecting each other, not exposing each other." The irony was so thick I almost laughed. "Family loyalty," I repeated. "Like the loyalty you showed me when you kicked me out in front of everyone? Like the loyalty Rebecca showed when she couldn't wait to take my room? Like the loyalty Jason showed when he called me a mooch?" My mother's face hardened. "We gave you a gift. An opportunity. If you're going to be ungrateful about it." "Mom," I interrupted, my voice quiet but firm. "Do you have any idea what I do down here? Have you ever once asked me about my work?" She looked uncomfortable. "You work on computers. Websites or something." "I built artificial intelligence software," I said. "For 5 years, I developed algorithms that analyze complex data patterns. I created a company called DataStream AI, and 6 months ago, I sold that company for $8.7 million. The silence that followed was absolute. My mother stared at me like I'd just spoken in a foreign language. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. "You're lying," she finally whispered. I turned to my computer and pulled up the bank statements, the sale documents, the contracts. I let her see the numbers, the dates, the proof. I watched as the color drained from her face, as her carefully constructed understanding of her disappointing daughter shattered into pieces. "This can't be real," she said, her voice shaking. "If you had this kind of money, why would you live here? Why would you pretend to struggle?" "Because I wanted to see who you all really were," I said simply. "I wanted to know how you'd treat me when you thought I had nothing to offer, and now I know." She stood up abruptly, backing toward the stairs. "The plane ticket. We didn't know. If you'd known, you would have treated me completely differently," I finished for her. "You would have valued me, respected me, probably asked me for money. But you didn't know, so you showed me exactly how much I meant to you. And the answer was, less than a spare bedroom." My mother's face went through a series of expressions. Shock, shame, anger, calculation. I could see her mind working, trying to figure out how to fix this, how to reframe it. "Claire, sweetheart, you have to understand. We thought we were helping you. We thought you needed a push." "Stop," I said. "Just stop. I don't need your excuses or your justifications. In 2 days, I'm getting on that plane you bought me. I'm going to Seattle. I'm going to start fresh. And you're all going to stay here and deal with the consequences of your choices." "What does that mean?" she asked, fear creeping back into her voice. "What consequences?" I smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. "It means that the secrets I've been keeping for all of you, I won't be around to keep them anymore. It means that Dad's creditors are going to start calling. Jason's business partners are going to discover his fraud. Derek's company is going to find out about his relationship with Madison. And the security team at Nordstrom is going to review some very interesting footage." My mother went pale. You wouldn't destroy your own family." "I'm not destroying anything, Mom. I'm just stopping the protection I've been providing without any of you even realizing it. See, when I discovered Dad's gambling debts, I paid off $50,000 of them anonymously so the collectors would stop threatening foreclosure. When I found out about Jason's business, I funneled anonymous investments through a shell company to keep him afloat. When Derek's affair started showing up in company emails, I scrubbed the servers remotely so HR wouldn't find it. And when Nordstrom's security flagged you, I hacked their system and deleted the evidence." Her hand flew to her mouth. "You did all that?" "I did. Because despite everything, you're my family. But I'm done now. I'm done protecting people who don't even see me. So when I leave on Saturday, all those protections disappear. The debts will resurface. The evidence will reappear. And everyone will face the truth they've been hiding from. My mother sank back down into the chair, all her authority and confidence crumbling. Claire, please. We can fix this. We can make this right. No, I said gently. You can't. Because fixing this would require you to actually see me as a person instead of a problem. And I don't think you know how to do that. She left the basement without another word, and I heard her climbing the stairs slowly, like she'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. I felt no triumph, no satisfaction, just a deep, quiet certainty that I was doing the right thing. The next day, Friday, the house was chaos. My mother had clearly told everyone about my revelation because suddenly I was the center of attention in a way I'd never been before. Jason showed up at breakfast, his face a mixture of anger and desperation. Claire, about what you said, about stopping the investments, you can't just pull out. My business depends on that capital. Your business is built on fraud and lies, I replied calmly, pouring orange juice. It deserves to fail. Rebecca arrived an hour later, Derek in tow. She looked at me with new eyes, calculating, sizing up my worth now that she knew I had it. Claire, she said, her voice sickeningly sweet, I've been thinking, maybe you don't have to go to Seattle after all. Maybe we can convert the guest room for the nursery instead. Your room has better light anyway, and… No, I said simply. She blinked, not used to me refusing her anything. No? But I thought we could work something out. Now that we know about your success, we want to celebrate with you, as a family. You want to celebrate the success you mocked yesterday? I asked. The little websites you dismissed? The work you called meaningless? Derek stepped forward, his salesman smile in place. Claire, we had no idea about the magnitude of your accomplishments. If you'd known, you would have been exactly the kind of people I was trying to avoid, I interrupted. People who value others based on their bank accounts. People who only show respect when there's something to gain. My father finally appeared, looking exhausted and defeated. He pulled me aside into the hallway, away from the others. Claire, he said quietly, about the gambling. I never meant for it to get so out of control. I've been trying to fix it, but the debt just keeps growing. I know, Dad, I said. Why didn't you ask for help? He looked away, shame written across his features. Because I was embarrassed. Because your mother would kill me. Because I thought I could handle it myself. And instead, you let me be treated like garbage while I secretly saved you from foreclosure. I said, not unkindly. That's the part that hurts, Dad. Not that you have a problem, but that you let them treat me like I was worthless while I was literally keeping this family afloat. Tears filled his eyes. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Claire. I know you are, I said. But sorry doesn't fix this. Sorry doesn't change what happened. That evening, my mother called a family meeting. We all gathered in the living room, the same space where we'd had countless family discussions over the years, but this time the dynamics had fundamentally shifted. My mother stood at the center, trying to reclaim her authority. We've clearly made some mistakes, she began, looking at each of us. We misjudged Claire's situation, and for that we apologize. But we're family, and family works through problems together. I almost laughed at the carefully worded non-apology, but I stayed silent, waiting to see where this would go. Rebecca spoke up. We want to make it right, Claire. We want you to feel valued and appreciated. Maybe you could invest in Jason's business, help him out, or help Derek and me with a house down payment. We could all benefit from your success. And there it was, the real reason for this meeting. Not genuine remorse or desire to repair relationships, but a naked grab for my money. No, I said simply. The room went quiet. My mother's face tightened. Claire, your sister is pregnant. Surely you want to help. I've been helping, I said, my voice rising slightly. I've been helping for years. I paid Dad's debts. I kept Jason's business from collapsing. I protected Derek's affair from being discovered. I erased Mom's shoplifting records. I've been the family's secret guardian angel, and not one of you noticed or cared. Jason stood up angrily. So what, you're just going to abandon us? Leave us all to fail? No, I said, standing to face him. I'm going to leave you to succeed or fail on your own merits. Like I did. I built my company without any of your help, without your belief in me, without your support. I did it alone because I had no choice. Now you'll have the same opportunity. Rebecca started crying, dramatic tears that had always worked on our parents. But we're family, Claire. Family helps each other. You're right, I agreed. Family does help each other. But family also respects each other, values each other, sees each other. And you've never done any of those things for me. My mother's voice went cold, her final card to play. If you walk out that door tomorrow, Claire, you're walking out on all of us. Don't expect us to be here when you decide you need family again. I looked at her for a long moment. This woman who gave birth to me but never really knew me. Mom, I've been walking alone my whole life. You just never noticed because I was doing it quietly. Tomorrow, I'm just going to do it somewhere else. That night, I barely slept. Not from anxiety or regret, but from anticipation. Tomorrow, I would board a plane to Seattle, to a penthouse apartment I'd already purchased, to a life I'd built entirely on my own terms. At dawn, I loaded my car with the few possessions I was taking with me. Most of my belongings would follow with the movers, but I wanted these last moments of independence. My father came out to say goodbye, his eyes red from crying or lack of sleep or both. Claire, he said, hugging me awkwardly, I hope you find what you're looking for. I already found it, Dad, I said. I found out who I am when no one is watching, and I like her. My mother stood in the doorway, her face a mask of barely controlled emotion. She didn't apologize. She didn't ask me to stay. She just said, I hope you know what you're doing. I do, I replied. For the first time in my life, I absolutely do. Jason and Rebecca didn't come out to say goodbye. They'd made their positions clear the night before. As I drove away from the house where I'd spent 32 years, I looked in the rearview mirror once. My mother stood on the porch, looking smaller somehow, watching me disappear. I wondered if she was finally seeing me clearly, or if she was just calculating how to spin this to her friends at the country club. I arrived at the airport 3 hours early, needing the space and time to process everything that had happened. As I sat in the terminal, my phone began buzzing with texts. From Jason, please reconsider. My business partners are asking questions. I need that funding. From Rebecca, Derek told me everything. About Madison. About you covering it up. Why would you tell him you know? You've destroyed my marriage. From my mother, your father had a panic attack this morning. The creditors called. This is your fault. I read each message and felt nothing but a strange, peaceful certainty. Their crises were not my responsibility. Their secrets were not my burden. Their failures were not my problem to solve. I typed one message and sent it to all of them. You gave me a one-way ticket away from you. I'm taking it. What happens next is up to each of you. Take responsibility for your own lives like I had to take responsibility for mine. Maybe then you'll understand what independence really means. Then I blocked all their numbers. Not out of anger, but out of necessity. I needed to start fresh, and I couldn't do that while tethered to people who only valued me when they discovered my worth. As my flight was called, I stood in line with my single carry-on bag, holding a one-way ticket that was supposed to be an insult, but had become a gift. A fresh start. A new life. Freedom from people who saw me as a supporting character in their stories rather than the protagonist of my own. I boarded the plane and chose a window seat, watching Michigan disappear beneath the clouds. Somewhere down there, my family was probably spiraling, probably panicking, probably finally understanding what they'd lost. But I wasn't worried about them. For the first time in my life, I was only worried about me. 3 months later, I stood in my Seattle penthouse looking out at the city lights reflecting off Puget Sound. I'd started consulting for tech companies, using my expertise to help other startups refine their AI development. I'd made new friends, people who knew me as Claire the successful entrepreneur, not Claire the family disappointment. My phone, on a new number, rarely rang with drama. Occasionally, I'd get an email from my father, brief updates that never asked for anything. He'd entered gambling addiction treatment. He and my mother were in counseling. He hoped I was well. I appreciated these messages because they asked nothing of me. Just simple human connection without expectation. Jason's business had indeed collapsed, but he'd found work at a larger consulting firm and was apparently thriving under someone else's leadership. Rebecca and Derek had separated after his affair became public, but according to my father's emails, Rebecca was raising her daughter with surprising strength and independence. My mother had been caught shoplifting one final time and accepted a plea deal that included therapy and community service. The public humiliation had been devastating for her, but my father wrote that she was slowly becoming more honest, more humble, more real. I felt no satisfaction in their struggles, but I also felt no guilt. They were facing the consequences of their choices, just as I was enjoying the rewards of mine. One evening, as I was preparing dinner in my spacious kitchen, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I checked the security camera and saw a delivery person with a large envelope. I signed for it and opened it to find a letter from my mother. Her handwriting, usually so precise and controlled, was shaky. Dear Claire, it began, I've started this letter 100 times and never knew how to finish it. How do you apologize for a lifetime of not seeing someone? How do you explain that you were so focused on who you thought your daughter should be that you never noticed who she actually was. The letter continued for 3 pages, detailing her journey through therapy, her realization of how her own insecurities and need for control had damaged our family, her understanding that the plane ticket wasn't a gift. It was an abandonment. She didn't ask me to forgive her. She didn't ask me to come home. She simply said, "You deserved better than us. I hope Seattle gives you everything we couldn't." I read the letter 3 times, and each time I felt something shifting inside me. Not forgiveness exactly, but a softening. An acknowledgement that people can change, even if that change comes too late to repair what was broken. I wrote back, a brief email, not warm, but not cold either. "Thank you for your honesty. I hope you continue to grow. I'm doing well here. Maybe someday we can have a relationship built on who we actually are rather than who we pretended to be." I didn't know if that day would come. Maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't. But I was no longer waiting for their approval or acceptance to live my life fully. 6 months after leaving Michigan, I was invited to speak at a tech conference in San Francisco. The topic was Building Success in Silence: How Invisible Work Creates Visible Impact. As I stood on that stage, looking out at hundreds of faces, I told my story. Not with bitterness, but with honesty. I talked about building a company while being dismissed by the people closest to me. About the power of working toward your own goals regardless of external validation. About the freedom that comes from defining success on your own terms. After my talk, dozens of people approached me. Young women who'd been underestimated by their families. Entrepreneurs who'd been mocked for their dreams. People who felt invisible in rooms full of people who were supposed to love them. "Your story gave me courage," one young woman said, tears in her eyes. "I've been hiding my business from my family because I was afraid they'd make fun of me. But after hearing you, I'm going to stop hiding." That moment, standing in that conference hall surrounded by people who understood, I realized something profound. The plane ticket my mother gave me wasn't just a ticket away from them. It was a ticket toward myself, toward the life I'd been building in secret, toward the courage to live openly. A year after leaving home, I received an unexpected call from Rebecca. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Claire?" Her voice was different, softer, less certain. "Hi, Rebecca. I wanted you to know that I had the baby. A girl. I named her Claire." Silence stretched between us. "You named her after me?" "Yeah," Rebecca said, and I could hear tears in her voice. "Because I want her to be strong like you, independent like you. I want her to know that success isn't about what other people think. It's about who you choose to be when no one is watching." We talked for an hour, really talked, maybe for the first time in our lives. She told me about single motherhood, about discovering her own strength, about finally understanding what I'd been doing all those years in the basement while they laughed upstairs. "I'm sorry," she said finally, "for everything, for taking your room, for dismissing your work, for not seeing you." "I know," I said. "And Rebecca, I'm not sorry I left, but I'm glad you found yourself." "Me too," she whispered. As I ended the call, I looked around my penthouse, at the life I'd built, at the success I'd created, at the peace I'd found. My mother had given me a one-way ticket, thinking she was pushing me out. Instead, she'd given me permission to fly. And I soared.